Welcome to the Think Fitness Life podcast, where we bring the mind, body, and gym together so you can improve your health, increase performance, and live your best life. For more information, visit thinkfitnesslife.com. Here are your hosts, Matt Gluckman and Eric Menchie.
Hello and welcome to the Think Fitness Life podcast again, everything mindset, exercise, nutrition. And today I bring you an interview with Dustin Baker, president of Bioprotein Technology, which is a non-synthetic alternative to human growth hormone in the realm of health, fitness, performance, and longevity. And I'm excited to say that this is a alternative solution to synthetic testosterone use. To peptide usage and over usage that has actually recently been banned by the FDA. So I love that he's at the forefront of this problem and finding a balance between modern pharmacology and functional homeopathic medicine into what is known as integrative medicine. And without further ado, I will let the podcast speak for itself. We dive into his background, how he got started, how he got called to be in this space, and all the things that they've found beneficial with their approach in terms of, instead of just adding hormones to the body, more of signaling the body to do its job even better. So without further ado, Dustin Baker, everybody. All right, there we go. We are live. So first thing I want to ask you, Dustin, is just a little bit about your background, how you got into the people helping business, and maybe your own personal fitness journey.
Yeah, well, they're actually both, I would think, one and the same, to be honest with you, because I'm in the health and wellness space. We work primarily in the hormone and endocrinology space with human beings and optimizing their hormones and helping them to offset the declines in their physiology, if you'd like to use that terminology. So, yeah. But my journey really started back in my mid-20s, I would say, early mid-20s. Actually, way before that, to be honest, when I was a kid.
So like 3 years ago?
Yeah, I wish. I work in the industry, so I have access to things that help me to stay young. Let's just say that.
For sure.
I do get high on my own supply, but we can talk about that later. But no, I actually, people, I do a lot of interviews, I do a lot of shows, I do a lot of stuff, and people always ask me like, how did you get here or whatever? And I would say, honestly, the industry and kind of my journey chose me. It really wasn't something I actively was reaching out for, like, oh, this is the space I want to be in. This is what I want to do. Cause it's not. I would say that my journey would really go back to when I was a kid and how I grew up. And the reason why I say that is because I did the exact opposite of what I preach now or how I live now. And I wouldn't say that was a decision I consciously made, but when we grew up, I grew up in a single parent household. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother. My mom was working all day. My grandmother, picked us up from school and raised us. And why I say that is because when you're living in those environments in a lower income household, and I think a lot of people can probably relate to this, is like the last thing on most people's minds or parents, especially in like the 90s or even the 2000s, or maybe even now, is like proper nutrition.
For sure.
Like, I'm a parent of a 1-year-old now. And if you scroll on the internet, you're going to be inundated with all these parents now who are like, oh, don't do this, don't do that. And that's great. But none of that stuff existed when I was growing up. And my mother her only care was making sure we were safe. We were in school. We had gas to get to work and to school in the morning.
The basic necessities.
Not like, oh, you can't eat this. You can't eat this. Like, here's the proper caloric intake for a child. Like, dude, we were just trying to eat, let alone, you know what I mean? Like if we had anything other than milk or water, like it was a delicacy. Like if there was a 2 liter of soda that showed up, man, it was gone in an
It was coveted.
Dude, it was gone. I remember like waking up, and if there was a thing of cookies, there was no way it made it to the next day. It was who was going to wake up in the middle of the night and eat them. Because I had siblings as well. But anyway, the reason why I say that is like, so when I grew up and through my teenage years and even through my, in my 20s, I had zero understanding of what would be considered healthy, right? Zero understanding. Those lead to bad habits. Like, man, I used to smoke. A pack a day cig smoker, super unhealthy, alcohol. You get into college and early career drugs, like all kind, right? The normal lost 20 something. That's where it leads you. Well, at least it led me there. I'm not saying everybody. And that completely like lost purposeless individual who, was in the heat of the moment and the what's the dopamine release I can get right now, whether it's
Right.
food, alcohol, partying, whatever that is, all comes to a head. And why I say all that is because it was fitness that was a massive paradigm shift. Because at this point, I didn't even, I may have walked into a gym once or twice. Like I was an extremely overweight teenager. So I had a friend who was really into fitness and was just like, hey, why don't you like stop doing all that stuff and come work out? And that first workout that we did really completely changed the mental place I was in. And the reason why I say that is because it wasn't like the workout itself or like that. It was that what I realized later in life is I didn't have a purpose. I didn't have anything I was working towards. I didn't have anything to push my chips into. And that was something that you could not buy. You had to work for. It was something I knew nothing about. So I found myself learning everything I possibly could with all the time I had, because I was barely employable at the time. So learning everything I could about how the human body works, nutrition, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Which led to my first job in fitness, I'll tell you, is I went to a gym that was expensive at the time, because this time I was still like working like restaurants and crazy stuff like that. And it was very expensive. And I lost my job. And I walked up to the owner and I was like, hey, I can't afford your membership anymore. I don't want to leave. I love this place. I'll do whatever it takes to earn a free membership, whatever. And I was like, I'll take out your garbage. I'll clean your toilets, whatever. That's exactly what I did. So he gave me a free membership. I took out his trash. I cleaned his toilets. I cleaned the gym. And what I found was, man, you couldn't even get me out of bed by noon, anything else. But now this guy, I'm working for free, and I'm at this guy's gym at 7 a.m. working all day, working out. Like it was great. And then one thing leads to another. In 1 month, he gave me like $250.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, you worked a lot. Here's some cash. And I was like, oh man, I can make a living at this. And that was the start at like this whole snowball roll. So, which led me to taking over other people's facilities and starting my own facility, and then working in the supplement space of private labeling products and learning sales and all this kind of stuff. Right. And it snowballs and snowballs and snowballs to the point where now a company that is in 40 plus countries. It's on every continent other than Antarctica. And it's been a wild ride. And there's a lot of stuff in between there, but that's where this kind of whole thing all ended up, is one thing leads to another. And I learned a lot in that whole journey. I learned I learned who my business was. I learned who my brand was from a personal perspective. I learned messaging and all that stuff. But
we see a lot of great impactors or disruptors, maybe is a good word, from people who just are truly intuitively passionate about this industry and this space. And it really bleeds through with your story, talking about from the ground up. And I think another thing I want to just kind of highlight too is from that time period to now, it's like a little bit of the transition from like this media, agricultural, pharmacological complex of, they used to have advertisements that smoking was good for your health. Smoking was a stress relieving piece, and then we have to kind of like what you were forced to do is kind of go down the rabbit hole and educate yourself in the proper ways to be sustainable and make the right choices for your own life. But then to be just a leader and create that impact for others, I think is so fascinating. So I do want to dive more into that in-between area, the went from cleaning toilets to 40 countries, your company in 40 countries here. So talk to me a little bit about how you got involved in the specific space you're in, helping people with hormonal issues.
Yeah. So during that in-between space, I ended up working in football for a while. I worked for a national franchise that I was a director of sales and marketing for a national franchise that does it does athletic training, but its bread and butter is football training, prepping high school kids to get college scholarships, and then prepping college guys for their pro day and the NFL combine. So I worked in there. I ran another gym prior to that in performance athletics, just for normal human beings, in a normal like monthly style gym, classes and all kinds of stuff like that, weightlifting and stuff. And then also during that time, like these are in succession. So running the gym, got into football, and then from football, I parlayed into opening my own facility. And in all three of those different ventures, I'd gotten my hands on a regional company here, a little lab in Tampa that was making these formulas. Now, they had quite a few different formulas back then, everything from weight loss to like liver decongestants and weight loss to sleep formulas, even down to your basics like vitamin D, stuff like that.
Were they
one of their main?
Besides the vitamin D, sorry to interrupt, but besides the vitamin D, was the weight loss supplements, were they geared at hormonal stuff? Were they more just like,
No.
pepper extract and
No, they were like methionine and aldosterone choline blends. Basically what they were doing is they were creating a sublingual option for those people who were taking like MIC injections, which was a huge thing in the 2000s. You don't really see it now. Now they give them away for free to try and get you into clinics to do their other things. So they're MIC injections, methionine and aldosterone choline. They do different things. They help to signal your body to utilize body like fat as an energy source instead of other things. So it cleans out your liver. So you have the ability to actually do that and have that hormonal response. So they weren't marketed towards exactly the hormone thing. But what I was getting to is they actually had more of a hormone style product, which is a growth factor product. Growth factors are the end result of human growth hormone. Okay. So they're cell signals created by the hormone to then signal the cellular change you're looking for when you take an exogenous hormone, whether it's muscle cell differentiation, multiplication, whether that's increases in the oxygen potency within your blood, whether it's to actually regrow the end of nerve. So like nerve growth factors. Anyway, so that was the product. That was that was kind of the core of their business. And then they had all these ancillary products around it. Anyway, I would use some of these formulas and I would implement them in different parts of the businesses that I was either operating, owned, or run. And across several years and across, a broad range of, let's just use the word participants, they worked. They consistently worked. They were repeatable results. They were great for revenue creation because they were expensive. And I had access to something that, in the grand scheme of things, now looking back, very few people did because it was just a small company. It was just a little regional thing. And so, there was plenty of other people getting their hands on this, but from a broad market stroke, nobody was really doing it. So anyway,
you were kind of like the Bill Gates, Bill Joy, Steve Jobs at first having access to internet, because I feel like in the last 10, 15 years, it's probably been more pertinent to the general public about what's going on hormonally. But yeah, it sounds like you were like right there, like pioneering, kind of understanding the major problems that were going on. Like, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's cool. I appreciate that. I don't see myself as really a pioneer of anything, or people like I'll be on a show and they'll be like, oh, this market disruptor. I don't see myself as any of that stuff. I got my hands on a few things that worked. I was able to test them profitably without, making some massive investment, whatever. I was just a lucky guy, right place, right time, saw an opportunity. I was able to thread them in. Yeah.
And then got your 10,000 hours earlier than everybody else, because it took till the 2000s. Like we have to live you got to go forward, but we all can look at our wake to learn. And it was like the 2000s before they were releasing different studies about, oh my gosh, male testosterone levels are tanking since the 80s because of, different herbicide, pesticide uses, plastics in the water supply. So like, it just sounds like you, like to your point, like you were right there at the right time.
I'll be honest with you is I knew that the formulas worked. I didn't actually know as much as I know now of why.
Right.
So I knew that they worked and I knew that they were applicable and I knew that they were safe. Yeah. So I didn't really know as much as I know now. Looking back, I wish I had known all those things. I think I would have had a bit more of a head start. To be honest with you, I didn't. At this point, I was in performance athletics. Remember, I was working with kids and guys who were either existing NFL, CFL, which is just a Canadian version of NFL. It's much smaller, but it's the same thing. NFL, CFL athletes prepping kids for their pro day, like I was interested in performance athletics and less about what I know now and what our business is now, which is not professional athletes. So I was pushing all this stuff. I was bringing it within other businesses, and whether those businesses were successful or failed, because there's been, equal amount of both. Those things were very congruent and stayed very solid. And during my interworkings with those formulas, it was not a large company. So I began to familiarize myself with people that work there, with sales guys, with all this kind of stuff. And then come 2018, the middle part of 2018, I was exiting a venture I was in that didn't actually do so hot. I was exiting that space, and I was actually going back to football. And I had a mentor who was like, hey, the next thing you're going into, I would like, if you ever need any help or support, I would like to be a part of. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll put that in my back pocket. I had a few mentors or different guys like that had, walked me through a lot of stuff that was like, hey, if you got anything, you're working on, I would like to know about it. I would potentially like to be involved. Okay, cool. I'm getting back into football. I was a few months into that. And by the way, it's good for everybody to know, I've never taken a snap of football in my life. I don't watch football. I don't know anything about football. Yeah, I was just literally found my way in this world of business that I had like no idea. My dad played, like we were joking about the cigarettes. My dad played minor league football when, I don't even know I was born yet, ripping cigs on the sideline. So, dude,
I literally wrote, I was going to ask you what position you played, but that's funny.
Nope, zero.
Yeah.
I
those who can't do teach, maybe? No.
I didn't teach football. I sold.
But you were coaching, right?
I sold.
Oh.
No, I didn't coach at all. I sold either combine prep, because athletes, like, you have to pay for that, right? An agent fronts that cash. So, when somebody comes, these are not 501, C3s, like, or these are not nonprofit organizations. The combine prep business is a huge thing. These businesses actually make probably half of their money, if they're not all combine prep or pro prep. They make it. This is a front load of cash for them for the whole year. So you'll have athletes on the lower end spending anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 for 3 months. That's very low.
Wow.
To $100,000 for 3 months for one athlete. There's everything in between, because you're looking at nutrition programs, how much training, housing. So Florida's the place for that. Baseball, football, etc. People from all over the country come train at these different facilities. There's actually several large ones down here. You find your coach, whatever.
It's an investment, because you possibly could get a multi.
Yeah, so that's how athletes make that's how agents make their money, right? So agents only make money on, most of them are not salaried employees. Agents are actually attorneys. They have to become an attorney to become a specific sports agent, at least in football and some other sports. In fighting, it's completely different, but there's no rules in fighting. You can do whatever. But anyway,
Wild West.
They lack. The combat sports space lacks a lot of protections that
for the athletes.
Correct.
Yes.
So, like, you can manage a guy, you can be an agent for a combat sports guy with no legal background or anything like that. They're just like, it could be who. So anyway, I see a huge opportunity there for agents if you're just looking in the
for those listening,
because they lack. And I'm not saying everybody. Somebody, I don't know. Somebody might be listening to, I do this guy, this guy. I understand. But they don't have a blanket set of rules like other sports do, which are protections. Anyway, I was a connection. I was a network guy. So I knew agents, and I would sell, work them in and bring them in with our, head coach and one of the owners, and set up those types of deals. I managed the actual facilities themselves and revenue generation and sales processes. And I would go into businesses. That's actually how I kind of got brought into the gym space. Was I would get brought in. I'd been successful in one location, and then somebody else wanted my services, et cetera. I would come in and build revenues and build sales process, blah, blah, blah. And so,
yeah. So why did you transition to the supplements?
That's right. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Just help me stay on track. Yeah.
Hi, dude. I have a squirrel, shiny object. So
there's so much to say. It's all right.
I was getting very familiar with the individuals who ran this lab and people who sold the products and stuff like that. And so I would just like, hey, what's going on over there? They knew me at some points. They actually brought me in to look at branding, marketing, messaging. What do I think? What do we think about this? How are we going to work with that? Blah, blah, blah. So that was kind of like my first step into there as well. Eventually I found out that they were in what I would consider a mismanagement period, and they were going through, as a company, they were going through inner turmoil between an ownership split and break because it was a family run business, and that doesn't actually typically work. And actually, I would say more times than not, doesn't work out well when you're involved with family and friends, et cetera. So they had a disagreement. I heard about this, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I see an opportunity here.
Mhm.
I called my mentor who I spoke about briefly previously. And I was like, hey, there's an opportunity here. I believe we can acquire this company and we can give it basically the
life it
justice,
needs.
the life that it needs. And he happened to be a user of the products as well, as of was I, since like 2014. This is now 2018, summer of 2018. And he's like, okay, cool. Figure out what you can. Let's do it. Anyway, we started the conversations, walked in there, say, hey, we're willing, we're interested in buying this part of the company or in these formulas, et cetera. And we had it was just right place, right time. This guy either needed to get in or out or whatever, and walked in, wrote a check, had a deal done within 3 weeks of actually, I think, having a real first initial call, which is breakneck lightning speed for a brand acquisition.
Yeah.
And now we're 5 years down the road. So since then,
it's still is it still the same formula that you were using?
So we've
then?
upgraded them. I would say we've upgraded them. We have, I would say we had shelved. There's only a few reasons why there's 2 reasons why companies are for sale. They are in disrepair. That could be a few different things. It could be somebody dying, no one to run the company. It could be what I just spoke about, which is internal turmoil. It could be mismanagement, all of the different things. It's in its, let's say it's downswing, right? So it's available to be purchased to then be fixed, which is any type of rehab with anything. It's like a house, right? It can be purchased to be rehabbed, or it's wildly successful. And the original owners, whoever owned it, wants to sell to somebody like a VC who's going to, dump $100 million into it and blow it up, but it's already successful. Those are the only 2 reasons why people sell companies, or rather available for acquisition. Ours was the latter. It was the prior.
It was in a downswing.
A million percent. After we got into it, I still think we way overpaid for it, but all water under the bridge, right? At this point, it doesn't even really matter. But as realistically, we were buying the opportunity and the formulas, and that's it. And so since then, dude, we had all kinds of stuff we had to fix. There was no systems in place. There was no proper, everything from accounting to manufacturing process. Everything needed to be rehabbed or even created.
Which probably, if inefficiency in the back end was probably making the product super expensive and inaccessible to the general public anyway. So it sounds like you were able to streamline things so that it was more accessible.
I appreciate that. I don't think they were making it really that accessible to anybody because they were siphoning money out of, they were not, I don't believe that and this is, again, the case for a lot of businesses, is that the funds that are brought in by the company, whether the small or large, need to be appropriated to the appropriate spots to then get messaging out, which was, I think, in the best sense possible, was their biggest downfall was they had a bunch of too smart guys in the company that were creating really good products and 0 guys smart in the company who are working on messaging and getting the word out. So you can have 50 formulas, which I think we own like 30. I think we bought like 20 something, maybe 30 of the original formulas that we have. And we market 1, we sell 2 more, and the rest of them just sit on a shelf, right? And sit in a file cabinet, because trying to market 30 different things as opposed to trying to market 1, the best product you have, the best one that works. I think people do that wrong all day long in business. That's a personal.
Chase 2 rabbits, you have no rabbits.
If you're marketing to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. So find out who your niche is, hard focus on them, and stop selling all this other crap because you want an extra $5 and go make an extra 5 million doing just one thing. So there was just, this is where the opportunities are, right? And this is how the space kind of, vacuums, soaks you up and gets you. And that's how I ended up in this space. And then coming to get your hands on these formulas and really understanding the science behind them, other than just that they work. We found more of our niche into the hormone space. Come to find out, really niching in and understanding the application of these products, working with physicians, is how we ended up working specifically in the growth hormone peptide space.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And we're talking like anti-aging, metabolism, immune system,
A million
uh,
percent.
skin, sleep, stress too. Does it help with stress management?
Well, anytime your body is in a stress environment, if you bring it back to an appropriate homeostasis, it's going to have less of a stress response.
Mhm.
So, I mean, most people are chronically walking around what I would say in a heightened level of stress. They're
Absolutely.
dehydrated. They don't get enough sleep. I think that's the number one thing. They eat trash all day, so their systems are in disarray. Forget about the businesses, man. I think I mean,
Yeah.
we work in sleep a lot as well, and I think it's like 68% of Americans are chronically sleep deprived, which is just a
Yeah.
complete. I mean, it will ruin every other part of your entire physiology,
Yeah.
let alone
And
just the stress response.
and just to add to your point, like they don't even your insurance won't even pay for a vitamin D deficiency test anymore because they just assume everyone's vitamin D deficient, right?
Yeah, there's
Um,
not much money in vitamin D.
yeah.
So it's good luck.
But
But
to your point, like everyone's in like a chronic state of inflammation, maybe even chronic pain, extended fatigue. And we talked a little bit earlier about just kind of the lack of a consistent sleep schedule, a lack of consistent proper nutrition that leads to hormonal and metabolic dysregulation.
I mean, yeah, I think people are walking around feeling like such trash. They don't even know what feeling normal feels like.
Right.
Not even
Right.
optimized. Not like optimal human performance and professional athlete. I'm talking like normal individuals, and this is now our market because this is we found we can make, working with athletes is really cool and stuff, but I'll be honest with you, it's not great for business, and there's not the
Mhm.
big market there or anything like that. And frankly, there really isn't a huge market there. The normal individual, which is our avatar, our specific best customer, is a 44-year-old male who's, either a prior collegiate or high school athlete that is somewhat competitively athletic, meaning they go into the gym a couple times a week, they do CrossFit or jujitsu, or they do cycling or triathlons, whatever. Those are our best guys because they're still actively putting their bodies into an environment that could benefit from additional recovery. But human beings are walking around chronically dehydrated, chronically sleep deprived. As you mentioned earlier, are environmental factors that are outside of all of our control, from air pollution to, I mean, I'm doing it right now. I'm wearing an entire outfit made of plastic. You know, like
Yeah.
in order to avoid those types of things, you have to stop breathing air, and you would have to stop breathing air, and you would have to live as a monk or a hermit in the middle of nowhere.
It's
That's the
not
only way to
realistic.
100% do it. It's not realistic at all. There are steps you can make and do, which I'm sure you're aware of, that you can at least mitigate some of the effects.
From some of these external toxins and things like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. But either way, your body is naturally going to decline in its hormone production every single year after you finish puberty.
Right.
So people only start to worry about it when they're in severe states in men, they call it andropause, and in women, they call it menopause. And that's when you have already pretty much hit, I would
Peak.
say, I wouldn't use the word peak. I would say the opposite, right? You're hitting rock bottom. Like you wake
Uh,
up one day, it's always the same story, dude. It's no big deal in your 30s. I start to feel this here and there, but you're not really paying attention. And then you wake up 44 years old, you look in the mirror, all of a sudden you don't realize, like, wow, I look completely different than I used to look. This is not who I see of myself on the inside. This is not how I feel. My smiles are fading. I have zero energy. My sex drive is starting to go out the window. And that's men and women both, by the way.
yeah.
And so that's really where we found the huge niche for our products and market, is because people, number one, they know that they're waking up and feeling like trash. And there are things you can do, from sleep, nutrition, appropriate workouts, to feel better. But there's some things those things are only going to mitigate so much. And that's why
For
people
sure.
start reaching out for synthetic drugs like TRT or human growth hormone, HGH, is the space we play in, although that's a
Yeah.
massively regulated drug now, that if you can even get your hands on it, it's insanely expensive and illegal in a lot of states to prescribe for certain things. And then you have the entrance of the world of peptides, which is very similar to human growth hormone. And now those human growth hormone style peptides have been banned by the FDA in November. So your third option is what we do.
Yeah. And, kind of to your point, it's like they don't see it coming. And then all of a sudden, bam, they're at this point where they're so deprived that they're willing to take the risks with the synthetic, you know what I mean? The synthetic options. Cause they're like, well, what else do I have? Right. Their back's up against the wall at this point.
I agree. 1,000,000%. It's the same way with finances. Most people are okay with a slow bleed as they slowly seep into debt until they are no longer able to function normally, and their entire life is mitigation of debt. So it's the exact same thing. I wake up in my 40s and your entire life is now, or at least how you feel, trying to make those things better is now you're just trying to mitigate massive losses and try and stay at somewhat or just gasping for air instead of taking the appropriate steps necessary to not put yourself in those positions. We work with a physician here. We have physicians all over the country. We have one here in Tampa that he has a great analogy. It's hormonal decline is like getting a paper cut every day after you finish puberty. So you're just taking a paper cut. Boom, 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 boom. You're not going to die of blood loss from a paper cut. Okay. However, if you take a paper cut every single day after you finish puberty, you're years down the road. One day you wake up and you're covered in lacerations and you're massively hemorrhaging. You're going to notice that, right? You're going to be weak. You're going to faint. You're going to all those things. You're going to die from massive blood loss. That's the same type of way. It's a little paper cut every single day. And then all of a sudden you wake up and it's like, oh, I'm trash. And, we wish people wouldn't do that, but that's just what it is.
And the beauty of your product, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's administered orally, correct?
Yeah, it's called a sublingual delivery. So what we do is it expresses, you pour it under your tongue, you hold it, expresses the blood vessels in your mucosal lining, which is inside of your mouth. And then you can absorb the ingredients directly into your bloodstream. The purpose is to avoid the digestion tract, also the conversion needed in the liver. So when a hormone is secreted by your pituitary gland, let's stick with growth hormone.
Yeah.
It's secreted by the pituitary gland in your hypothalamus. It gets sent to your liver first to then be converted into growth factors. Okay. The growth factors are cell signals. So a hormone is simply a chemical catalyst for a change. That's all that it is. It doesn't necessarily trigger the cellular response. It has to be converted first by the liver into those cell signals. Those cell signals are called growth factors. It's the growth factors that are sent out into the blood to trigger the cells to make a change. Let's talk about muscles. You got fitness people on here. It's a growth factor. IGF-1 is the specific growth factor that triggers the multiplication and differentiation of muscle cells. It's not the hormone itself. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we don't want to mess with your hormones. Number one, anytime you replace a hormone, I do not care what anybody says.
The body will stop producing it itself.
Correct. It will slow down and eventually stop production of that natural hormone. What that is called negative feedback loop. Okay.
Right.
You have now when you squeeze the pituitary, right? We like to think of it like squeezing a lemon. When you manipulate the secretion of that hormone synthetically, that's what a peptide does. When you squeeze that pituitary, you squeeze it like a lemon for more juice, more hormone. You're going to incur negative side effects through that as well. Mm-hmm. So we take our product sublingually. We're avoiding the conversion in the liver and we're avoiding the digestive tract. One, because we're not giving you a hormone. We're giving you the end result. We're just giving you the growth factors. We're giving you the protein cytokines to signal the cells to act.
To do their job.
Correct. And we do it without replacing the hormone or manipulation of the glandular function. And you're right, we don't use an injection. So there are different ways to administer stuff like this. You take an injection, you take it what's called sub-Q, so subcutaneously in the skin and in the fat of your skin. Okay.
Which is most HGH, most testosterone applications.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Absolutely. And then
I just want to highlight too, the other side of this is with the peptides and with the synthetic hormones, they have potential collateral negative effects, meaning long-term damage that is, you can't change it. Irreversible. Thank you so much. Yes. Whereas yours, it's like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You just stop taking it and I
don't think people really, and that's the thing is we work listen, I am not a physician. I never claim to be. I am not a scientist. I am a normal guy that has just done a lot of research. I've been in the industry now for quite some time. I actually care. I literally get sent around now, and a little bit less than I used to, but I go and I educate physicians on what we do in a lot of actual hormone function, which is insane because you would think physicians know everything. They do not. And to their defense, there's no possible way to know
They
everything
can
about
know
everything.
everything. Exactly.
Correct. That's why specialists exist. But from a general medical school perspective, there are a lot of things that people do not know. There's only so much time. If a physician was expected to know everything and be the hero of all, they would just be in school until past the time of their death. It's not fair. It's also not fair to expect that of them. There is a personal responsibility that should go into this. So in the physician's defense, because I don't want them to think, nor do I want to be, this anti-hero again.
For sure.
But
you're preaching to the choir. I just got to say, you're preaching to the choir because I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis back in 2014. And I had a plethora of doctors come in and out telling me all the drugs I was going to have to be taking. And nobody, not one GI specialist talked to me about nutrition, so it's just fascinating. But so I love that that's where you are right now, because you're right at the helm of where people are going with their problems, and you're helping the provider see another tool in their toolbox that they can provide to the patient.
1,000,000%. And again, I think it's kind of just stroke of luck here. A little bit of heart, a little bit of elbow grease, a little bit of luck with where the market is kind of open and provided some opportunities for us, especially with literally direct competition being banned by the federal government. I mean, it's great, but
it's good for business. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. And not to say that those products don't work, but to your point, I was at a show. Okay, so physicians every single year, depending upon the type of medicine that they practice and what they're allowed to do, et cetera, so they have to go to continuing education. They have to go get different credits for different accredited organizations to learn about things, to be able to do stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So we go to these events and I go there and I get in front of physicians and I go, boom, 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 like this. Now I'm a specialist and I focus on exactly what I do. I don't go outside of what I do not know. And I'm happy to tell them, listen, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is what I know about. And 3 years ago, I was at one and I was like, hey, these peptides things are great. And I didn't know much about them at the time, but I knew enough. And I was like, you guys are not using them for what they're supposed to be used for. And you're way over prescribing them from a sense of they're only supposed to be used for so I'll take a step back. So here's what peptides are. Peptides are glandular manipulators. They stimulate the pituitary gland. Now I'm talking about very specific peptides. The word peptide is a broader stroke term that's used now for multiple different drugs. Okay. I'm talking about secretagogues, which are secretagogues, secrete the hormone, blah, blah, blah. That's where the name comes from.
And the basic definition of a peptide is just a short chain of amino acids.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. It's a short chain of amino acids. Now, here's the issue is that they are synthetically creating amino acid chains that do not exist
in the human body. Oh, in nature. Ooh.
These are completely compound. It's the word they use now is compound. Not against compounding pharmacies. I understand. But these are synthetically created chains that are being used to create a change in the body that would never naturally happen. Period.
Interesting.
Okay. So 3 years ago, I was sitting at a conference and I was like, hey, you guys are going to cause some problems here because the FDA, and I am not a proponent of the FDA for a lot of different reasons, but
for sure. That's for another podcast.
It's a whole other thing. They approve a lot of stuff that, turns out to be really bad. If you want a really crazy story about the FDA, go look at LASIK. Did you have LASIK done before?
No.
No.
Dude,
the guy that created LASIK looks back and goes, I cannot believe they allow these surgeries to happen.
Yeah.
It's a whole other rabbit hole. But if you want to look into it, there's a guy named Sean McCormick who has a show, Optimum Performance Podcast. I'll give him a little plug because he's a really cool guy and I like him. He's become a friend. He does a show years ago. Probably 2 years ago. I heard of his show on the FDA on the LASIK. And I was like, blew my mind. I never thought about FDA. I never thought about LASIK ever again. So anyway, I was like, hey, when you do these things, when you prescribe medications outside of what they're designed to do, the federal government many times will step in and say, hey, guys, you can't do that. It continues. And they go, hey, seriously, don't do that. And then it continues and it gets real out of control. They go, you know what?
We're
done here. We're shutting it down. And then everybody gets real mad. And though I agree that peptides work and have a legitimate medical application for certain things, they were being prescribed way out of control, meaning they're originally designed to use for 3 weeks after a surgery for accelerated healing.
Yeah.
Then it gets into, well, now we have multiple different peptides. Okay, you have to cycle between the two. You can't just keep people on it. And then it went on to, they're just prescribing this stuff indefinitely. And so we don't know what that's going to do. And I was like, you don't know what that's going to do to people. We don't know what that's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And then it gets shut, 3 years later, boom, almost to the month. Cause it was in December when I said that. And in November of last year, they did it. And I was like, whoa. Anyway.
They've seen the negative side effects of peptide hormone abuse, with bone paralysis, skeletal muscle damage, diabetes, hypothyroidism.
I mean, you could go on. Anytime you're going to manipulate hormonal function, and I'm talking about the chemical hormone, whether it's a replacement or whether it's a secretagogue or something like that, you're going to incur some sort of negative side effect. Mm-hmm. Okay. The first one we talked about was negative feedback loop. What's really crazy about like growth hormone, which absolutely works for its application, what it's originally was created for was in the 60s for children who were born without growth hormone. They have human growth hormone deficiency syndrome at some crazy low rate where they could not grow. Awesome. Great application. They used to suck it out of dead bodies. They used to give it to kids. Wow. They figured out how to do it in a DNA petri dish. Great. Does it have effects for anti-aging? 1,000,000%. Absolutely. Now, when you take a drug, you are taking, and this is a physician's term, not mine, a selective poison. You are saying, I am willing to absorb these risks and side effects for this cost. It's a cost-benefit analysis.
Well, the basic rule in pharmacology is rule of thirds. So a third of the time it's going to work, a third of the time it's going to do nothing, and a third of the time it's going to make things worse. So to your point, what was the term again? Selective poison?
Poison.
Selective poison. Yeah, that's good.
You have to knowingly go into something before you take a drug that you are taking a poison of some sort. Even Tylenol. More people overdose in this country every single year from Tylenol than they do any other illicit drug.
Interesting.
And it's because people don't look at it like that. Tylenol is a drug. And what it does is it's a toxin and a poison, just like anything else. Your liver has to detoxify that toxin. What happens is, you take too much, you take it too often, the bile or the actual like liquid in your liver that's used to detoxify these toxins from your system runs depleted out.
Yeah.
And that is what an overdose is. Yeah. Okay. So people like drink all night, they get really hungover. Guess what? Your body spent all night detoxifying itself. It has no liver solution left. You wake up, you pop Advil, maybe you take some more at lunch. Boom, overdose.
That's another one I could do a whole rabbit hole on with the alcohol. I mean, people forget that that's a poison as well. Especially literally the health and fitness industry is going to promote like, oh, you can have 2 or 3 glasses a week or a glass a night, but please don't eat fruit. It's just ridiculous. And it's all backed just by money.
I hear you. And whatever's kind of like clickbait worthy, and it is what it is, man. It's
for sure.
You could do this all day. You'll never not be able to do it. It's always something else. It's just, you can't stay on the internet, but you shouldn't stay off the internet. It's the whole thing, dude. Good luck. When you figure that stuff out, you let me know. I'm very interested.
No, but I love that you're a proponent of a safer alternative, and it's
literally what I do for a living.
Getting up for in the morning for sure.
Agreed.
For sure.
And so that's what we do is we provide a non-synthetic alternative to this stuff. We suck it out of other mammals, just like they make other bioidentical hormone stuff. Like
biotin.
People don't realize like bioidentical testosterone is sucked out of sweet potatoes, sucked out of yams. They make thyroid medication out of pigs, tissue. Like this stuff has to come from somewhere. But either way, it's a better alternative than the synthetic drug that you're injecting into your body.
For sure.
But yeah, so we just give you a third alternative that doesn't manipulate any of the glandular function and not replacing the hormone. Now there are downsides to that. Okay. By downsides, I mean, we actually don't have the ability to perform in certain spaces where they can. And what I mean by that is in an abnormal space. So if you're taking a synthetic growth hormone or a peptide to put yourself into an abnormal environment and you're trying to turn into Brock Lesnar, we ain't for you. Like we're not this magic drug. You're going to take it, turn it into the Kool-Aid guy and blast through brick walls. It doesn't work like that by design. If you want a safe alternative that's going to give you the same benefits, we're the right guy. If you're taking something to have a competitive edge outside of, optimizing your physiology because you're at a lower level just because you're older, we're probably not for you. We tell people all the time that call in or hit us up on the internet about certain things. And we're like, we're probably not for you. And that's okay. I would hate for somebody to buy our stuff and be upset about it. So we're very open about that.
We're all about, not having to rob Paul to pay Peter. Don't sacrifice trying to get performance today for cutting off longevity for tomorrow. So I love that it combines both worlds. And I'd love to talk more about some of the study or the positive effects that you've seen in your participants.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy. So we work huge in the DoD space. Well, I shouldn't say DoD, but I would say the military, veteran, and tactical space.
Okay.
We have worked with the federal government in the certain portion of the Federal Bureau of Investigations blind tested our product with some of their recruits, and we got big stamps of approval and all kinds of fun stuff. So with them, and why I bring that up is one of the biggest results, and this is anecdotal, but it was repeatable, is we had a gentleman who was using the product, bought it, tried it for a couple of weeks, and it turns out he has a very thorough, I can't say military career because technically he wasn't in the military. He was in the NSA, which is separate, but he was without getting too much into the story, let's just say is very Men in Black. I mean, literally how Men in Black happens, pick this guy out of a police force, put him in a secret intelligence agency and do all kinds of weird, crazy stuff overseas. That was him. Literally picked up, just like the movie, picked up out of a police force in New Orleans and, made into this dude. I mean, he did all kinds of crazy stuff. He even went and trained the UAE royal family in like jujitsu and combat and stuff. It was crazy, like awesome. Anyway, the reason why I used him is because I didn't know him. We didn't know who he was. And he started taking the products. He was an explosive breacher. That was one of his specialties. So he created explosive breaches, charges, explosives. Okay. And during his tenure of doing that for years and years,
exposed to so many different chemicals and toxins.
Not only that, what's really happening is you get exposed to what's called blast overpressure. Now, blast overpressure is when you're next to a charge or close enough within range. You're experiencing that blast constantly. Now, you might not be blown up, but you're taking those waves of energy into your skull. All right. So you get TBI, you get traumatic brain injury. And one of the symptoms of traumatic brain injury are ocular seizures. So your eyes will just twitch, right? It's not enjoyable. Anyway, so he takes our product, his ocular seizures go away. Now I can understand, and I'll explain the science behind, I will utilize science that exists to explain some of this because I can't say that I've done this clinical trial.
No, you're good.
But so he stops taking the product, his ocular seizures go away. He's like, this is stupid. This is crazy. No way. Stops taking the product. Ocular seizures come back. 2 weeks. He's like, okay, I got to try this again. 2 weeks back on, disappears. So this guy was this linchpin. This man was a linchpin between all of the things that came after with all the work we do with military veterans, all the work we do with tactical guys, the FBI tests, all this kind of stuff after was because of this one guy started taking, and now we're all over the place in that. But it was really wild to see. Now, when you start to look at, I'm really jumping here, but I'll try not to get too far off base. But when you start to look at the eye, okay, and you even look in cases of diabetes where there are portions of the eye that, I'm using the wrong terminology. I'm not an ocular guy. I'm not an eye guy, but they cease to work properly and they start to die off. What they have found is growth factors, specifically IGF-1, can then trigger a kind of a healing type event, right? So they can tie a lot of stuff to the decrease of IGF-1, which is the end result of human growth hormone. That's how you test for human growth hormone. But anyway, so basically by the application of these growth factors, his ocular seizures were brought to zero. I mean, it was a complete 100% reduction. And then you see the same types of things when you start looking at diabetes patients who are having some sort of ocular incident or blindness, that type of stuff. There are studies to then show the application of growth factors would do the same thing to help with those eye issues. You can it's really wild actually when you start to dive into it, because the more that our company grows, we find different
areas where
niches of medicine who are reaching out to us are like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And so it starts to get on our side of a lot of research into the application of growth factors themselves and where they fit. You can tie everything from erectile dysfunction, diabetes, Parkinson's, ALS, MLS to a deficiency in growth factors.
Yes.
And I can continue to go on. I mean, we did a whole
for sure
thing of, I think it was close to 25 different neurological diseases that could all be tied back to whether it was IGF-1 or a different growth factor deficiencies or lack thereof. And it was really wild, which then stems to like, okay, well now we're able to now tie why this product is working in different factors, because our product is not a singular growth factor, like where a peptide is going to create specifically just IGF-1. The raw material that we're using and extracting from, we have 13 different growth factors. And that's where peptides fall short, is they don't have a full profile of all the growth factors that we see that you would need, where we're adding 12 additional ones, everything that has to do with collagen stimulation in your skin to the actual nerve regrowth of nerves that have either died off and or injured, for lack of a better term. So it's been a pretty wild ride, and I foresee it to continue.
Good for like post-operative individuals who may have had like Achilles surgery, shoulder surgery. Good for people who are aging, who are losing the insulin, their insulin hormone ability to regulate their own blood sugar, and they see their weight gain occurring.
That is specifically where the studies are in our favor. Insulin resistance. And insulin resistance, if you're looking at metabolic function, like, well, how does your product help lose weight? Well, it doesn't magically tell your body to just like, hey, burn fat. That's not how this works. What it does is, in many cases, it is helping to repair insulin sensitivity issues. So how your body utilizes insulin. Now, that is really when it sounds like you know exactly what I'm talking about. But that is really where you see human beings, especially over the age of 35, are struggling with weight gain, but they don't know why. And without proper testing and without really additional information, they're going to a general practitioner. He's not going to have any idea about that either. And one of the things that's causing so much insulin issues are the use of very specific pharmaceutical drugs. Meaning the top two, which are female based. Well, I'm not going to say men don't use these drugs, but I will say that it is not me. It is statistically proven that they use less. And I'm smiling because you're going to probably laugh, but birth control is number one.
Okay.
I can't say that. I can't say men don't use birth control. I don't know, but I'm sure somebody out there is taking birth control.
Yeah.
It's probably pushed. I don't know. Anyway, both of those drugs absolutely are tied to insulin sensitivity issues, meaning they are obstructing the way that your body spikes insulin to then insulin tells your body how to use food. So if you're not using food appropriately or as an energy source, which insulin is telling you to do, you are going to store it as body fat. And then people do all these things to try and work out and do all these, I can't lose weight. That might actually be the case. And a lot of people, you want to talk about the internet, a lot of people are busting people's balls out there. It's like, oh, you just need to eat less and work out more.
Yeah.
And that might be the case. However, if you have a hormone issue and your body does not actually use insulin the right way,
the cards are stacked against you.
Yeah, dude. I mean, come on, give these people a break. So if you've been using birth control since you were 13 and you're 40, 30 years of prescription drug use that nobody told you was going to do this stuff. Yeah. And now, boom, here we are. Same with
not to mention the epigenetics of, say, your parents and what they took, and then the gene expression that then becomes you and how your body.
That's way too far in me to even think about it that way. At this point, it's it's like, well, I might as well just give up.
But to your point, like all previous solutions, and this is why I love what you guys are doing and why I'm so happy to have you guys on the podcast, because you guys really are where medicine is becoming more functional, where previously it was like, oh, you have pain in your foot because there's a rock in your shoe. Well, take some Advil, cover up the symptom. And it's like, well, let's actually try to find the root cause of the problem and correct that. Let's take the rock out of the shoe.
And that's part of the reason I think our business, a few things. I mean, our business has exploded in the way that it has, and that's because the market, is really moving towards. You use the word functional. I think functional is now becoming a
little taboo.
Not being a jerk. Not taboo. No. It's now be functional, and we will use the word mainstream medical. Okay, are now finding a happy middle ground, and that word is integrative.
Okay.
So integrative medicine is where we are at, and that is a pop.
The middle road. The middle road. Yeah.
It is MDs and DOs, and not that functional medical professionals are not helpful.
No, I get your point, though.
I get it. But integrative medicine, where you have mainstream medical understanding now, MDs, DOs, surgeon, I mean, across the board, you have these professionals now seeing like, okay, this extreme side is not exactly ideal. because we're patching stuff here. We're not fixing anything. And then the complete left fringe of like pseudoscience is here. Not that there aren't bits of truth here,
Right.
but
But it's a
there
lot
are.
more
And
homeopathic on that side,
let's
on
not
that
use the word
hand.
fringe. Let's go to experimental.
Right.
Okay. And now you're finding a really good, and then you came to like functional. And then now we're really coming to this this integrative space, which is phenomenal because you have all of the good parts from experimental style stuff, and you have all the good parts from true pharmaceutical medical intervention when needed.
Yes.
Right? Because
Yes.
I'm not against pharmaceutical medical intervention. The key term is when needed, not just because.
Right.
Because I will tell you that everybody getting an integrative medical is 100% on this hormone train, and they absolutely prescribe, testosterone, all these things, and we're not against that stuff. It's when it's medically needed. I will tell you though that once you start subscribing to things that you got to be on for life, you're on them for life. Don't ever forget that. So I like the good integrative docs will approach things from a root cause application and not just let's just throw you on all these drugs that we can possibly throw you on and call it from there. So
no,
we're at a good place. We're headed in a good direction. I think, at least in that part of medicine. I can't speak for all of it because there's so many different. Medical is not one, we like to throw around big pharma and all these different things. And sometimes I think that gets swept in there, but medical isn't necessarily, this is not just some one world type thing. I mean, there's so many different factions of this stuff. It's fair and appropriate to give credit where credit is due,
for sure,
and to say, hey, this is not cool when that needs to be said as well.
And to your point, swinging so far one way or the other, we kind of lose that moderation aspect. And people do, we have gotten to a side where we probably more publicly vilify, psychopharmacology or pharmacology in general. And if you look at some of the major step functions in human longevity, we can look at sewage, when we stop literally urinating, defecating in our streets and dying of bacteria, and then penicillin and antibiotics. That one was a major step function in our ability to mitigate further infection and sepsis from surgery and things like that. So we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I love how, again, you're integrating both sides and both strengths to a healthier, safer alternative.
That's what we do, Matt. You did my job for me at that point.
So we're coming here to an end, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but so where can we find you? Where can we find your products? And
I always tell people, the internet. So you can go check us out on the internet. We have a great presence on Instagram, and why I tell people to go there is because the Instagram is user generated stuff. It's all people that use the product. It's educational. We don't do stupid gimmicky sales pushes and all that nonsense on there. It's really good for informational purposes. And if you have any questions specifically, you can reach out and somebody will get to you and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome.
And that being said, outside of that, we have clinics all over the United States that offer our products, that are approved physicians and providers that can give you a more in-depth view if you want to do that. From California to South Africa. They're everywhere, right? So you could, if you need a clinic or something like that, you can reach out to us on the Instagram, or even on the internet, right? We have a website, bioproteintech.com. It's bioproteintech.com. There's a chat bot there. That's a human being operating that. It's not, a weird robot. So you can ask them, hey, I need a clinic X zip code or city. Cool. They can help you out as well. The Instagram is the same name, Bioproteintech, BIOPROTEINTECH. And
I'll include it in the show notes.
Family or team.
Awesome. I'll include it in the show notes as well. And the last couple of questions I just want to ask you is, what's your favorite lift and what's your favorite quote that comes to mind? Maybe just today even.
I was thinking about the quote when you said that earlier, and I forgot what I was going to say, but I will use, this is going to be long-winded and it won't be a direct quote, but I think it's appropriate, especially for anybody building a business out there or even in the fitness journey, which is, here it is. It's sacrifice now for your reward later, or sacrifice your reward later for whatever you get now. So I
love it.
Yeah, I destroyed the guy who said it, but all it means is, if you want the big reward, you have to delay gratification right now to get there. And that is in business and everything. I learned that the hard way about 3 times over. There is, and multiple different things, but that's also with your fitness, right? If you want
your health, for sure.
If you want real, attainable, really good results, you're going to have to delay.
Sustainable. Yeah, exactly.
You're going to have to delay the now for the later. Delay the now for the later, and then, your reward or whatever. So you get that quote. My favorite lift. So, my favorite lift that I do now, or my favorite lift of all time?
All time.
I love the squat clean. I think so cool. I think it's so cool. And when
there's so much going on.
I don't lift like that any longer. But when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, like that was I did lift like that. And there was no better feeling than hitting a huge, really clean squat clean right in the bottom of your squat and standing it up. But one that felt good. It wasn't just like, dog
sloppy
thing over time. I mean, when you hit it and you just hit it right and it sits right in, right in that pocket, there's nothing. I mean, there was no lift that would ever feel better. No squat, no lift felt better than that hit. Because when you hit it and you hit it and you catch it in the bottom of your squat and you have it in that rack, like you kind of already know you have it. So like that dopamine hits, like when you already hit that clean.
Yes.
And then you're like, oh, and then people are screaming and it's fun. Like I was lifting with football players. And so like when you would hit, I mean, it was I didn't play football, but if you spend any time,
become a product of your environment though.
Yeah, dude. And you were in the locker room and you hit your lift there's nothing that can replace that from a gym experience. So yeah, the squat clean, when you hit it, it's just, look at my
curious,
face.
What do you do now?
Like,
Yeah, you're lighting up.
Oh man, because it's been so long. That's my other big
now?
thing, and that's a whole nother show. But I truly believe really great results from workouts exist as you age, as long as you are auditing your program to fit your physiology and age. I tried pushing 2-hour workouts and just countless sets and reps and stuff I used to do a long time ago that I was in insane shape. I lifted, I ran, I sprinted, I could run a 5-11 mile. I carried those things into my later 30s, and it did not work the same, man. And it's like law of diminishing returns. And when I learned to audit my training to then fit my lifestyle, I got a business to run, I got a kid, I got a wife, I got, employees, like all these things. I can't sit 2 hours in the gym. It just doesn't work. And it was detrimental to my actual physiology. When I really cut things back and focused on my body changed. I'm not a super old guy, but I'm old enough. So what I do now is I do my core basic lifts Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I have a squat, a push, and a pull. Back squat.
Yeah.
And then Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, I do 25 minutes of conditioning. I really like EMOMs. So if you're EMOM,
every minute on the minute.
That is my, I believe
bread and
EMOMs
butter
are the basis of everything, dude. The timing is essential. Anyway, so I do that. And then I do have a coach, and I train combat sports, MMA, wrestling, Muay Thai, Monday, Wednesday, Friday as well. But those are separate.
Love it. Staying active and the basic tenets of human physiology: squat, hinge, and push. I love it.
I finally, and I
do the same thing.
I never did that my entire career as a pseudo athlete and anything like that. And I will tell you, I subscribe to them here lately, and it keeps your workouts short. Mm-hmm. So very specific, and it keeps them fun. And what I mean by fun is fun enough. I'm not thrilled and it's a party out there, but fun enough that I can stay consistent. And
exactly. That's the key. The consistency. 1,000%. Well, Dustin Baker, everybody, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for your time. And love to partner up somehow one day and maybe be able to promote and fight the good fight you're doing as well.
Yeah, we always have room on our team, Matt. I appreciate you for having me on and letting me, puke verbally on you for an hour and 10 minutes.
It was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
If you're ready to make steps towards improving your health or increasing your performance, book a free 30-minute call today by visiting thinkfitnesslife.com.